Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today we are going to take a look at all of the features and deliverables that had work ending in October, and there are some major elements getting completed, so sit back and relax. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated, and if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So each month, I like to put together a video that takes a look at all of the work that is kicking off, as well as finishing, just to keep us all more informed as to what work is going on in the background. Now, before we get to it, just because a feature on the progress tracker has work beginning or completing in a particular month, does not necessarily mean it'll be released that quarter, the next quarter, or even in that year, as there could still be more work required from other teams, like the downstream teams, audio, visual effects, and so on. Or even priorities can shift and it can get pushed back until needed. It is, however, a great guide to see what could potentially come to the persistent universe when, but at the very least, it shows us what work is being done at what time in the year. So with that said, let us take a look at all of the features and deliverables that had work ending in the month of October. And apologies, this video is a little late. So first off, let us talk about the Actor Status Tier 2. Now this is expanding on the current hydration and nutrition values and introducing hygiene, radiation, and more. Now we saw a few of these new values during CitizenCon, with radiation values increasing the closer you are exposed to the source, and your suit offering limited protection, which can deplete over time, exposing you more to the radiation, affecting the player and eventually killing them. Now for hygiene, this is definitely the more polarizing for players. I have loved the idea of it ever since it was spoken about years ago, and after seeing the demo of it at CitizenCon, in which the character can sweat and get dirty, which can then lead to disease and infection, which will tie into the medical system, treating illnesses and quarantining if necessary to stop the spread. But for other aspects of the game affected by hygiene, NPCs and mission givers may react to you if you are dirty and not offer you missions until you are clean. Blood was also an effect we saw, and talking further about the medical profession, which is quite deep already with the various effects and treatments, albeit with a beam for now, it will expand to be more physicalized, tactile, and blood will allow for this to be a lot more visceral, and as a medic, you will be able to better triage a situation simply based on visuals, helping you to identify a problem much quicker and leaning into the skill element as well. Now, although we don't know when this work is coming into the PU, we have seen it and it looks to be in a pretty decent state, so fingers crossed we're not waiting too long. Now, before we move on, I just want to highlight an unusual entry into the progress tracker called Ship 36, which doesn't specify whether this is for Squadron or the PU, either or both, and had 27 weeks work from the Montreal Vehicle Content team and the Visual Effects team. Now this Montreal Vehicle Content team is a new team. As we know, they are fleshing out a dedicated vehicle team in the Montreal studio as well, and I don't know if this ship has been revealed yet, or why it's called Ship 36, but it came to an end in October. There is also a Ship 38 from the Montreal team that finished in December, so we will talk about that more then, but it's just an unusual entry, so take that as you will. Anyway, moving on. Next, we have artificial gravity, which is all part of this engineering system allowing players to walk around inside their ships, their homesteads, space stations, and it will also mean that players can turn this on and off, and maybe even a value between on and off like low gravity. This means that we will be able to use this as a method of repelling boarders, making their attempts difficult, or as boarders, making the lives of the crew on board of the ship that you're attacking difficult as well. Now, gravity generators will need to be maintained, fixed, or repaired, and will age and degrade just like any other part of a ship, and although it wasn't specified when this will be coming into the PU, we know Q2 next year is when this team, or the EUPU team, will be rolling out the resource network. So hopefully this includes artificial gravity. I don't know, it might be part of the life support system, which actually brings us to the next feature, being life support tier 0, and again will require players to maintain and swap out components of the life support system, which will provide atmosphere, oxygen, temperature in ships as well, also planetside bases, space stations. Now, oxygen tanks, it sounds like they will be physical items that can be bought and sold or scavenged from other locations, and life support will also be helpful for tackling fires. and this system will be accessible via panels in locations and can also help when we are attacked at a location, turning off oxygen or raising the temperature to help or hinder those inside. And I will say, while exploring Patch City, one of the space stations in Pyro, I did find a bit of a maintenance area with tunnels and equipment that I feel like they will utilize for maintenance missions or sabotaging missions. Now, life support itself, as we know, is coming into the PU, or they're aiming to bring it to the PU for Q2 next year, so fingers crossed they can get that in, as that would be pretty epic. Now next up we have the character creator, which we got to see in action at this year's CitizenCon, and oh boy was it everything I wanted to see and beyond. The level of customization looks great, the hair looks phenomenal, beards are now going to be a thing finally, and characters that look real and believable, and I'm really hoping that they are that good that they are recognizable, as I love the idea of walking around my ship or around a city somewhere, recognizing people based on their face, so knowing what crew member is talking because I can see their face moving, which will not only just be cool in itself, but also very beneficial for security reasons. For example, if there is a player on board who shouldn't be there, if you're able to look at them and not recognize their face because they don't look like the crew you boarded with, then you will be able to fling them out of an airlock, or put them in the brig. Now, we are not sure when the character customizer is coming to the persistent universe. It does look somewhat ready to go, so here's hoping in the very near future we see it in game. I know for a lot of the Squadron 42 stuff, they want to get that in for Q1 in 2024, so around March. Whether or not this is included in that list is yet to be seen, but it certainly could be. Now, cutting tier 2 is next, and this is involving the multi-tool cutting attachment to allow players to freeform cut on specific materials or cut open doors to access certain areas. I also suspect part of this work, or the driving force behind getting it done, is due to structural salvage, which will involve the same process using the cutting lasers on salvaging ships like the Vulture and the Reclaimer. So slicing off chunks of a ship and then tractoring them into your grinding device on your ship, which we know is intended to release for Alpha 3.22 for the end of the year, so I do wonder if we will finally get the multi-tool tractor beam version, or even a dedicated tool perhaps as well, being able to go out and chop off bits of ships. Now this would then also allow for the actual slicing of ships by hand while in EVA, and that does remind me, we are yet to get the functioning salvaging backpack, which had work in tandem with a dedicated salvaging tool, allowing players to gather RMC while on foot, but beyond just the multi-tool attachment. Anyway, cutting tier 2 had 56 weeks work that came to a close mid-October, so here is hoping that we get to see not just structural salvage, but FPS salvaging expanded with the backpack and the dedicated tool, and maybe many other use cases as well. Now next up we have 3 new ammo types that I have banded together to save a bit of time. We have disarray ammo, incendiary ammo, and plasma ammo. Now disarray is a charged ballistic projectile that will emit electromagnetic pulses, which will damage the target and also disrupt power systems. Incendiary, as you can imagine, is a ballistic ammo type that burns upon impact, creating a damage over time effect and potentially setting fires off. And plasma, somewhat similar to incendiary with a damage over time effect, but it will also leave a hazardous material behind that can cause further damage when in close proximity to it. Now with these 3 new ammo types, the Maelstrom damage system, resource network, and fire propagation system, they all connect together. So I think the chances are we will see these 3 come along, hopefully around Q2, maybe a bit later on next year, as they roll out the very systems they affect. It will also add a whole new element to Star Citizen when these do come in, having to consider the best use cases for them and protection against them, further expanding on many systems, especially combat itself. So leading on from that, we have distortion propagation, which is directly linked to the disarray ammunition and allows this damage type to affect components and items, with the items closer to the impact suffering more severely than those further away. And this, it says, will fulfill the original vision that Cloud Imperium had for distortion weapons. And right now in game, distortion weapons are way overpowered, but when the resource network rolls out, this will be able to properly shine and have ships becoming disabled through the various system failures when using weapons of this type. It will also be very useful for bounty hunting when you are wanting to capture your bounties alive, disabling their ships, and then boarding. Now, Distortion Propagation had 45 weeks work that completed mid-October. Now, moving on, we have the Player Interaction Experience Tier 2, or PI, as it's been shortened, and this one is the Visor HUD and Helmet. And we saw the updated Visor HUD at CitizenCon, albeit just for Squadron 42 to start with, which will be getting a visual change for the Persistent Universe. They also said they are getting all of the helmets ready for when we can actually take them off, hold them in our hands and inspect them, or place them down. So modeling the full interior of the helmets so that we can do this rather than it just being a box. This, I think, will feel like next level immersion, and over time each helmet or helmet type will have its own individual visor HUD. I'm sure many will be unified to a degree, but this means more contextual HUDs to suit the helmet's role. So mining versus salvaging versus combat versus medical and so on. This is a feature that I am really looking forward to, as it will require us to really think about what armor we need based on what we are planning to do that day or the mission that we have taken on. Again, not a clue when this will roll out into the Persistent Universe, but the work on this on Squadron 42 is done, and now it's just a case of converting them to the PU, and as we have heard recently, Q1 is when they aim to get the majority of the Squadron 42 work to the Persistent Universe. So again, let's hope this includes helmet HUDs. Now the next feature is sliding. Not a huge fan of this. I'm sure it will be handy in the Persistent Universe, but when I first heard about it, it doesn't really stick with the Star Citizen theme of being a slow-paced, tactical and thoughtful FPS game. I'm sure it'll come in handy and will provide a cool bit of style when fighting an FPS, and as they have mentioned during CitizenCon, it is intended to be getting a player to cover rather than using it as a way of mitigating your hitbox. So if it sticks to that and is about getting into cover as quick as possible, then I'm certainly sure it'll be very useful. Now, Swimming Tier 0 is next, and after seeing all of the water updates on the way, this feature is even more wanted than ever. Now, water in Star Citizen is going to become one of, if not the most impressive water simulations of pretty much any game to date that I have ever seen. And with that comes the want to not just build a homestead next to the lake or drive a boat on the water, but allowing us to jump in and swim, maybe even training up my lung capacity and capabilities of holding my breath, which will be great for other areas of the game, but also all of the various gameplay that will come with water on all scales, from exploring the depths for treasure or rescuing players or NPCs from shipwrecks that crash into the ocean, and much more. Maybe even wrestling sea creatures. Water is looking amazing, and I'm sure there's more work to do for it, but swimming is a needed mechanic before Cloud Imperium can really expand the gaming area into water. So thankfully this work completed in October, and here's hoping we get it into the PU as soon as possible. Now for vehicles, there are 2 unannounced vehicles completing work in October. Not a clue what these are, but one had work from the EU Vehicle Content team and Visual Effects team, and the other from the Montreal Vehicle Content and Visual Effects team, so they could be straight to flyable, drivable vehicles, but not sure if we have seen any of them already or not. We will have to wait and see what comes along. Now, one feature that I am sure all of us are very happy to have seen shown off at CitizenCon this year was the new map updates. From the local area map to the dedicated map that goes from on-foot locations, zooming all the way out to the grandeur of the star map. Again, what we saw at CitizenCon was for Squadron 42, so it will require them to convert that to the Persistent Universe version, but the heavy lifting work is now done, so it should not take them too much time. And as I say, Q1 is when they want to get most of these stuff we saw for Squadron 42 into the PU, so again, fingers crossed, that is including the star map. Now, not only will this make navigating around the verse so much easier, but also allow us to place markers providing a navigation point to return to. Great if you find something of interest, like a shipwreck full of cargo that you can only take a little bit at a time, coming back with a bigger ship, but also the ability to sell coordinates for points of interest. For example, if you find a mining location or a wreck, you could place a marker and then sell that information or auction off the coordinates to the highest bidder. This system will be a game changer for playing Star Citizen, and with the Pyro system on its way, it will be a necessity to helping us explore the vastness of this new system. I really hope it is coming as soon as possible, Q1 next year would be a dream, but it's such a big system, it could potentially be later. Now next we have weapon misfire and wear, and this we also saw during CitizenCon, and basically as a weapon ages and gets used, it gathers wear and tear and will eventually misfire, requiring a player intervention. So this will encourage players to actually look after their items and weapons, maintaining them to stop that from happening. Now the work on this came to a close in mid-October after 106 weeks work, and although we are not entirely sure when it will make its way into the persistent universe, again, it could be one of these Squadron 42 features that comes for Q1. And the same goes for the MobiGlas rework, which is the next feature to complete work in mid-October, and as we saw at CitizenCon, this is bringing the MobiGlas up to snuff in terms of UI and functionality, as well as future-proofing it for further features and apps. A huge update that will be a great quality of life improvement, and I also hope to see this in Q1 next year. Now, one major system that I was so happy to see shown up at CitizenCon is the physical damage and breakability system. This is actually named the Maelstrom system, so if you hear the term Maelstrom in Star Citizen, it is referring to this, and essentially allocates realistic material parameters and damage simulation to almost everything in game. Now, we saw it demonstrated on buildings and ships, but it will apply to many other things, and one thing it didn't show off was how ships will collide with planets, leaving behind a wreck that ages over time. Now, there is a lot to the Maelstrom system, and the potential is massive, so here's hoping we start seeing this roll out as soon as it's ready, which will most definitely be more of a next year thing than this year, but it did have 145 weeks work that concluded in late October, and I am sure there is more to do, but it cannot be emphasized enough how impactful this system will be for many areas of the game, but mostly for combat, moving away from that traditional health pool meta into a realistic physical damage system, and it is gonna be carnage. Next we have the fire hazard system, which after years of talking about it in videos like these, I am so happy to finally see it in all of its blazing glory at CitizenCon, and as we recently heard from the EUPU team, it is intended to release for around Q2 next year, so around June next year, alongside the resource network and life support systems. Now, fire is going to be something we need to be very conscious about in game, ensuring that you don't do something to set it off unintentionally, which will certainly keep us on our toes, but not just in ships and vehicles, but buildings and eventually the environment as well. It looks great, it looks like a well thought out and detailed system that I bet will be very satisfying to put out, and this feature had 135 weeks work that looked to complete at the end of October, and I'm so happy we have a tentative expected date of release. Now next we have the Headhunters gang, who we met during CitizenCon, and it's wonderful to see all of the work that Cloud Imperium are doing to bring each gang to life with their various traits and behaviours, but also their aesthetics as well, like tattoos and outfits. Bumping into, fighting or gaining reputation with gangs like the Headhunters will be a very interesting aspect of Star Citizen that I think many, including myself, will really enjoy. Now the outfits took around 30 weeks to complete for the Headhunters, finishing in mid-October, which we got to see during CitizenCon, but I don't think we're going to see the Headhunters properly until we have the Pyro system. Now the final PU feature is called Subsumption Editor Integration, and this says recreating the Subsumption Editor's functionality inside the engine to allow easier setup and debugging subsumption logic for the designers. Now, Subsumption is the tool that drives the AI, so this is getting that tool integrated into the engine to make the process of setting up all of the AI in-game easier and quicker. And this had 135 weeks work that completed in mid-October, and for 321.1, so what we have in the live build right now, much of, if not all of the Squadron 42 AI work was implemented into the persistent universe. And I bet that this tool had a bit of a hand to play in that. Now, all the remaining features that came to a close in October were Squadron 42 specific, which included all of the remaining chapters, the character work, and the enemy character work. We know Squadron 42 is feature complete, which means all that remains until Squadron 42 Chapter 1 is ready to release is polishing and optimizations. And as we are hearing, there is a huge team restructuring going on to onboard many of the developers who were exclusively working on Squadron 42 into the persistent universe teams to now exclusively work on the PU. So things are really going to be ramping up this next year, and I am here for it all. But that was all of the work and features that came to an end in the month of October. There was quite a lot there, so thank you for sitting through this video if you did. I will be now checking out all of the work and features that completed work in November as well, so do keep an eye out for that video. But with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping us get to 60,000 subscribers. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome over there. The link is in the description below. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.